Yes, if you want to put it in the slideshow view, then we're all set.
Are you seeing it in slideshow view?
Perfect. Yes, it looks great. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Jessica, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics, bumblebees. So just a little introduction. As Jessica said, my name is Jay Watson. I work with the Wisconsin DNR. I work in the Bureau of Natural Heritage Conservation, so I focus on endangered, threatened, rare species across the state. I focus on not just bumblebees, but butterflies, beetles, all kinds of different insect species. So I travel quite a bit across the state doing survey work. So I just wanted to let you guys know that there's other species that I focus on too. But with that, I'll get started here. Make sure everything's working here. I'm going to stop my video so I can see my screen better. But yeah, so our project is called Bumble Bee Brigade, and this project was started in 2018. It was kind of a pilot year we began, and then we really fully launched it in 2019. And for today's talk, I'm gonna really focus on just kind of an overview and then like how you can get involved in the project. Prior to COVID, we actually had in-person trainings, and hopefully we can get back to that someday. But we did tape and put a lot of that information on our webpage. For some reason, there we go. So how did we get this? How did we start this project, and what was the thought behind it? Really, we've been hearing in the last decade or so, bumblebees and other pollinators are in decline. And so looking just across North America, at least 25% of our bumblebee species, which we have about 46 species in the US, are declining. 25% of those are, and for reasons as some of the threats are diseases, habitat loss, pesticide use, and then climate change are some of the bigger driving factors behind that. You might have also heard about rusty patch bumblebee. When we were in the initial stages of thinking about this project, this bumblebee was being assessed at the federal level and was decided to be listed in 2017. It has declined at least 87% in the last 20 years across its whole entire range, which reached all the way out to, and I do have a slide that'll show that eventually, but all the way out to the East Coast and then over to kind of just getting into the Dakotas. And we really didn't know. We knew it occurred. We had some observations in Wisconsin, but we didn't know it's really where it was still occurring across Wisconsin. So that was another reason for starting this project. And then it's just a map showing what data we had about this species from a different project called Bumblebee Watch. And so we knew some observations across the southern part of the state. And so looking at all the other bumblebee species we have, no one in Wisconsin based on historical records. So we have 20 species from work done by Medler and Carney back in the 1960s. And currently, almost half of those are declining as far as best we know. We have 8 of them that are special concern. Those are the ones circled in blue. And 1 is federally listed, as I mentioned, the rusty patch bumblebee. And 3 others are what we call species with information needs. We didn't even have enough information to really assess them. So we're trying to gather more information. So hopefully we can make a decision on that. So why did we decide to go the citizen-based monitoring route? Well, we have a proven track record in Wisconsin working with citizen scientists to really gather this type of information to help us learn more about species that are lacking information. And we thought bumblebees were easily photographed. I'll put easily, I guess, in quotations. It requires a little bit of patience to do that. But and then we can identify them by the photos. So we thought that was a good fit. And there was a lot of public interest, as there still is, in pollinators and bees. And then we were planning on building off of our existing citizen science projects, like I mentioned, Bumblebee Watch, that are out there to the public. Our mission is to improve our understanding and management and conservation of Wisconsin bumblebees. And our long-term objectives are to develop an accurate map of species distribution. That's where we're really in the initial stages of doing. We're getting a pretty good idea of this. Might have a few extensions to some of the ranges. And then hopefully we can start to build on that by identifying species habitat associations, and then assess habitat conditions and determine conservation threats. And really try to, over a long term, determine baseline, population status and monitoring the trends over time to see how these species are doing. Just kind of do a basic overview of bumblebee biology. So bumblebees are considered what we call social insects. They have a caste system. So there's a queen that develops, she starts the nest, and then she has workers and males. And they have, unlike honeybees, they have an annual colony, where honeybees have a perennial colony. It's a colony that persists over multiple years. Bumblebees are found in a wide variety of habitats, everything from our backyards to parks to our natural areas and agricultural settings. They're more diverse, kind of interesting in terms of insects and other species. They're more diverse in our temperate and mountain areas versus many species are more diverse in the tropics. And part of that is they're just really very hairy, covered insects, so they don't prefer really hot, humid climates. And they're found active into mid-April. This year is a little bit early. We've had some end of March observations, but in general, mid-April through early October. And this varies. Some species come out a little bit earlier, some are a little bit later coming out. As I mentioned, their hairy bodies, they're active early and later in the day. And they also can do what's called buzz pollination. They take their wing muscles and don't use them for flight, but use them to basically vibrate the flowers. And some plant groups only can get the pollen dislodged through buzz pollination, like our tomatoes, that whole Solanaceae family. So they're really critical for pollination in those species. A quick run through here of their life cycle. Right now we're in number 1, where just right now the queens are emerging from hibernation, and then they'll be out looking. You'll see them kind of bopping along the ground or around your house looking for a nesting site. And a lot of times they're in the ground in abandoned rodent burrows, or some species, it depends on the species. Some really prefer below ground. Some are fine with above ground and cavities in trees, or bird houses that had nesting material in it from the previous year, and they will utilize that. So they're looking for some type of nesting structure. And once they find a suitable nesting site, then the queen starts to collect pollen. And actually, I just today got my first report from across the state of a 2-spotted bumblebee down in Dane County collecting pollen. So she is already starting to, she has a nest site picked out, and she's starting to lay eggs, and she'll collect pollen to provide for that first brood of eggs that she lays, which will turn out to be the worker. So that's just starting stage 2 here, where she's sitting on her egg there, and then she has a little honey pot she fills to make it through cold, wet days like we've had a couple of lately. And then as we move into June, going down into 3, that's when the workers, her daughters, emerge, and they take over the foraging of the nest, and she pretty much stays in the nest. You don't see her really unless there's problems, something happens, and then she'll try to either reestablish a nest, or you'll see her out foraging. But so that's when the colony is building through June and getting into July. And then as we move into August, we have males being produced here, so mating taking place, and the colony starts falling apart. And really, it's just new reproductive gines or queens for next year that are mated will go and hibernate, finding a spot in the digging into the soil under the duff or something like that, under a log, that connects this year's colony to next year to start the cycle over again. So a little bit of what that looks like and what we can do to help them. So as I mentioned, it's a social colony founded by a single queen. Some of the pictures, if you can see my mouse here, you can see the little opening in the ground this bumblebee is going to be going into. That's what they typically look like. They're pretty discreet, hard to see unless you see a bumblebee coming in and out. Or you can have them in a birdhouse or something like that. And then this is just an example here, this lower picture, what the nest kind of looks like. This nest was disturbed either by a animal or a predator. A lot of their nests get predated on, so they're a food source out there for other organisms. So their nests typically can be 100 to 400 workers if they're having enough resource availability. That depends on, varies by species too. And as I mentioned, they use abandoned rodent burrows or under log or in grasses. So that's a really important thing we can help with, is conserving brush piles or unmowed or areas to provide habitat for them to nest in. And just another thing to mention, out of those 20 species that we have in the state, 5 of them are what we call cuckoo bumblebees. They are social parasites, so they do not have a structure called the corbicula on their hind leg for carrying pollen. They've decided to basically just sneak into the nest and lay eggs in their host and have them take care of the nest for them to produce their offspring. So you can see these are the 3 that we've documented in the state, what's called lemon cuckoo bumblebee here on the left, the Fernald cuckoo in the center, and our indiscriminate cuckoo. Our other 2 species we have not been able to document yet in the state. They're not doing so well, it doesn't seem to be the case. So diving into here, how you can help, and some components and structure of the project. So it's a photography only based project, no handling of the bees needed. So all you need is a iPhone or whatever, a smartphone, or a point and shoot, or some other camera to be able to take photos of the bees. And it's 3 main components that really are needed. So you do the survey, so taking those photos, then what we call the curation process, or basically behind your computer, and you get a lot of photos, unfortunately, that are blurry, that aren't useful. So you can skip through those and use the ones that are clear. And then we usually zoom in or crop them. So when we're verifying on our end, once you submit them, we can actually tell where the bee is and see the features that are needed. And I'll mention this later too, a little more detail, but you're trying to get multiple angles of the bee if possible. And then you submit once you have those photos that you curated, submit them to the web page. So there's 2 ways to contribute, what we call incidental observations. So those are just your opportunistic or unplanned or casual sightings, where you're just out in your yard and you see a bumblebee and you take a photo of it. And those are really important, documenting information of what species occur where. And then we also have another option called our small area surveys. This is where you're purposefully out looking, so you're keeping track of the time you started, everything within the small area survey, which is a 30-meter diameter circle, and then you count and tally everything you see to the best you can. It gets a little hard sometimes if there's a lot of activity, but we cover that in more detail in our manual, which is on our website, or we also recorded our trainings that are available on the website too. So when and where that you can survey, like I mentioned, April to May is kind of when the activity starts picking up with bumblebees, and then through October. And you really want to avoid days when they wouldn't be out. So rain, high winds, or obviously severe weather. And one tip is they're a little bit easier to photograph when it's like cooler in the day before it gets, to the warmer part. So they're really moving along. And then anywhere you have flowering plants is pretty much where you want to go. So here's just kind of some tips on photographing and IDing bumblebees. So you could do this method, for example, in the photo. This is more a macro lens and you get pretty close, but for the most part, you don't really need to get that close to get good photos. But this is just kind of the color diversity that's out there for bumblebees, and this is just taken from the Bumblebees of Eastern United States field guide. There's another field guide called our Bumblebees of North America, and we also produced on our web page, we have a handy front and back field guide with males and females, one on each side. So this is all females, and you can see you have the ones that have the more black pretty much on all the abdomen versus you get the more yellow all the way on the abdomen, and then some have the reddish or oranges, and then you get kind of everywhere in between for the different variation out there. Some things to keep in mind while you're trying to photograph bumblebees: there are some mimics out there or lookalikes. So you're trying to separate out some key features that are helpful. And sometimes it's hard to see, but bumblebees have 4 wings, so 2 sets, versus the flies. They have only 1 set of wings. Bumblebees have long elbowed antenna versus flies have, like robber flies and hover flies have these short stubby antennae, and that's pretty true for most flies. They also don't have that beard structured for the most part. Some of our males can get a little bit more yellow on the face, but these big, large eyes, bumblebees don't have those where they almost touch like that. Then also that structure that I mentioned for carrying pollen. And flies have fleshy pads on the end of their foot versus the bumblebees have little claws for hanging on to the flower structures, and probably for digging too. So those are some of the key features. And some of the mimics are pretty good. They fool you until you look through your photo. So yeah, just some things to pay attention to for that. Quickly running through what we're really talking about with parts of the bumblebee. So we have the head, we have the thorax, which is the middle section. Then we have the abdomen, which is really, if you ever submit to us and get feedback for when we're talking about how to ID them, we divide it into these segments 1 through 6 for females. So we call them terga, or we'll just abbreviate that T1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then on males, they have an extra segment, so T7. And then we have the midleg, the foreleg, the midleg, and the hind leg. And we really, for determining the sex, we're really looking all the time at this hind leg to see if it has that structure for carrying pollen. And some face features that are important is this is the face, and we really are looking to see what the hair color is on the face. So does it have all yellow? Does it have all black? Or one species has just tufts of yellow at the base of the antennae, and the rest of it's black. And then this vertex structure at the top of the head is really an important feature to tell between the species too. This one's all yellow. This is our northern amber bumblebee, or Bombus borealis, but some are all black, some are intermixed. So that's another, when we're talking about the vertex, that's where it's found. So just quickly running through how to tell a male from a female, looking at these diagrams. As I mentioned, the females have 6 segments, and the really key part in here is they have this pointed tip to their abdomen. If you get a good look at it, that's actually where their stinger would be, versus a male, where that additional 7th segment is rounded. Males can't sting, they don't have that structure. Then just looking at the leg here where that corbicula structure would be, it's wider on the females versus the males. It's thinner. And I have some examples running through that from some photos. And I did my best here to try to, because I know this gets tricky sometimes to count the segments. So you're really trying to look for that divide between where the hair changes. It's actually on the exoskeleton of the bumblebee. There is a space there between each segment where they can bend it and pivot. So that's what you're counting: 1, 2, 3, 4. For this species, T1 through 4 are all yellow, and then T5 is black, and then this has that T6 that's pointed. So this is a female. And then this is the same species, but this is a male. It's a little hard to tell sometimes with the segments because the wings cover it. So this T1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is black, and then 7 down here, a little harder to see, but it's not pointed, is more rounded. And that other structure, the corbicular pollen basket, is another great way to tell if you have a male or a female. So that structure is this bare area here on the, it's nearly flat, a little bit concave on the outer surface of the hind leg, or the tibia, it's known as, surrounded by long hairs. And those long hairs are kind of stiff and they help hold the pollen in for carrying it back to the nest. So here's one that's pretty obvious, full of pollen. And then here on this rusty patch queen, without any pollen yet, it's pretty noticeable. And I should just mention that cuckoo bumblebees do not have that structure. They'll look more like a male without that flat structure. So some tips for photographing. This is, really a great set if you can get a dorsal view here showing the top, a side view here, and then a face view. I know that's not always the case. Sometimes they just come in and leave pretty quickly, but if you can, that's really helpful for identification purposes. And just some tips while you're shooting, if there's a lot of activity, taking a spacer photo, so you've transitioned from that bee you were photographing to a new bee. Sometimes it's not as obvious which bee you were photographing, so that'll help. And then I just highly recommend a lot of patience and practice with photographing, because as I said before, you'll get a lot of photos that are blurry. So that's just kind of how it goes. And this is a confusing bumblebee, or Bombus perplexus. So getting into just covering a little bit of how, stuff on the website, and really without volunteers submitting photos, this project wouldn't be possible. So you need to, if you haven't already, would be set up an account. Once your account's set up, this is what it looks like. You just would enter your email and password to get in to the site. And then here's how you can get involved. This is if you go to the Get Involved tab on the web page, which I guess I could emphasize backing up here. This is the web page here, what you would type in, or if you forget, you can always just Google Bumblebee Brigade and it will come up too. So yeah, we have our volunteer manual, that field guide I mentioned, and some data sheets if you would like to use those. Our video, our training slides, I'm sorry, and then frequent asked questions, and then how to create your account and submit your data. So a lot of useful information. And then I just did another screenshot here. This is resources and we keep adding to this. We have our list of our 20 bumblebee species found in the state. And then we've come up with ID quizzes that you can run through and practice, and they go through the features you're looking for. They've been really helpful, volunteers have said. And then we've just put on advanced ID for some other features that help with ID, like cheek length, hair length, and eye size. And then some other, like I mentioned here, guides, bumblebees in North America, the one of Eastern United States. So a lot of good information there. So getting into some of the results, since we started this project in 2018, we've conducted 10 trainings. 4 of those were in 2018, 6 of them in 2019. We did have 3 planned in 2020, but we had to cancel those due to COVID. And we have not currently been able to get any approval to do trainings for this year either. And I doubt we will till we get COVID under control and move forward that way. So we've tried to put our trainings online. Like I said, we broke them up into different segments so they're not super long, because you can see our trainings were 4.5 hours, and that included an indoor portion and then an outdoor component. We've currently trained 198 people. There's the breakdown, and then just the map showing we tried to get coverage across the state, and we were trying to fill in some of that central part of Wisconsin or northern forest area in 2020, but we'll kind of have to wait on that for a while. This is just an example. We weren't sure what to expect our first year, which was our pilot year, so we didn't really do much promoting the project, just trying to work out the kinks and see how it was going. We had pretty good coverage across the state. This is just a little bit over 1,000 observations. And you can see there's a few little gaps in there, but we were really happy with how successful participation was. And here are some of the results since the start of the project. So we had that, like I mentioned, 198 folks trained, but we also have people who submit that didn't go through the training, which is great. So we have a total of 284 volunteers that have submitted observations. The breakdown of that from the different options, we had 2,936 incidentals, 532 small area. We just did a webinar the end of March, which we're hoping to put on our website soon, to try to help people out with small area surveys to give people a little more confidence. I will say, just starting out, you really want to probably start with incidental to get a better feel, because I've heard from volunteers that doing small area surveys can be a bit overwhelming. And we do, if you can, try to partner with somebody to help with, if you're doing a small area survey, someone to help you write the data down while another person's doing the photos and keeping track. So, but that might be a little more complicated right now. So a total of 7,216 observations. And of the 20 species known to occur in the state, we verified 18 species so far. Found on 1,169 sites from 70 counties. So we have 2 counties that we haven't had any observations submitted to B3 yet. And one of those is Clark County. The other one's Menominee County. So if you're in that area, just to let you know, those are needs for more information. And 350, this is really, for stuff I work on, 350 new sites for those species of greatest conservation need that were circled. So we've learned a lot since the start of this project on where these species are occurring in the state. And 13 new county records for the rusty patch bumblebee or Bombus affinis at 173 sites. So a lot of great information from the start of this project until the end of last field season. And then you get some fun stuff that I've never even seen while being out, like this Bombus impatient or common eastern bumblebee mating, which doesn't happen too long, and there's multiple males here. So that was courtesy one of the volunteers, Ed, who captured that. And then this nice perplexus or confusing bumblebee taken here by Mary. So just I wanted to do a breakdown for northeastern Wisconsin for this talk. So these are the counties I'm including here. We've had 63 volunteers, 970 observations, 547 surveys from 177 sites. And really we've had everything captured in B3 except one species, Bombus frigidus, which has only been documented at 2 sites in the state captured. So that's pretty amazing. And then 24 observations of rusty patch, and that's from 9 counties, and 4 of those were new as of last year. So we're still learning a lot about where rusty patch is occurring in the state. And then really some great things that have happened, successes here. We've had 36 nests that were found from 11 different species. And exciting last year, courtesy of Milwaukee County Parks, we had our first rusty patch bumblebee nest found in Milwaukee County. So that's what this center photo and then the right photo are from. And we've also, Milwaukee County Parks has used Bumblebee Brigade to survey all their properties and submitted their data to the website. So that's been really great. They've learned a lot. And we just give them back a spreadsheet with their data so they can keep track of what they've found. I'd just like to add, I didn't get a chance to throw it in the slide, but Woodland Dunes has given me permission to survey on their sites, and they have also submitted observations to B32, so that's been great. We've also had a Wisconsin Bumblebee Observers Face Group page that started. I think that started last year, so that's been really helpful, directing people to the project and also answering questions, and they can share information that way. Then internally, we've had a lot of help from our landowner incentive program, our state natural area crews, and other DNR staff that have been submitting to the project. So that's been really helpful too. Some just continuing some more successes. We get a lot of these amazing photos. For example, here, this cuckoo bumblebee Bombus flavitus, which wasn't very well known across the state. And now I think we have it from most of the top 2-tier counties in northern Wisconsin. And then we get a lot of these interesting uncommon morphs coming in, which is fun. This is and you don't even see these in the field guides, but this is a male vagans that has orange tip on its end of its abdomen. So really fun. It keeps it interesting for sure with identification. And then just some feedback the volunteers have really appreciated is monthly updates and that we send out, and then annual report. And then there's just a range of interest from people doing incidental observations to daily surveys. We had a volunteer last year that submitted 606 observations in Dane County alone, and then some volunteers trying to see every species in the state. So that's pretty fun. Just a few challenges we've had since the project started is keeping up with observation verifications, which is tough during the field season because I'm out doing field work too, so it can be get behind that way. We've had some tough IDs based on photo quality, or only one photo submitted, and different things like that. So we've been trying to really improve that if we can. I know it's not always possible. Then we also just capacity. We don't have a dedicated staff person for the project, and then long-term funding is always an issue. So just some challenges we've come across to share on the project. We've had some great photos submitted lately. This Sandersoni, which is a really hard beta ID from photos, but this one, the series gave us all the features we needed, submitted by Nora. And then this is one of our few observations of Bombus pennsylvanicus submitted by Anne to the project. So we actually just had our first males submitted a Bombus pennsylvanicus this past year for the project. And then we can produce some fun phenology graphs. This is for Rusty Patch to kind of show, what to expect while you're out. Here we get the queens flying in the springtime, and then when the workers kind of start, and then the males are out too. So, and you can go for each species on the species page and look at phenology flight, and we'll keep adding to this as we get more observations. And we just got this map thrown together here. This is our most up-to-date where Rusty Patch has been found across Wisconsin. So you can see we pretty much have every county in the southern part of the state, and we've been finding. We just had Door County added last year, and Kewaunee County was new, and I think, yeah, Fond du Lac and Winnebago counties. So we're still learning a lot. So there's a lot of opportunity to help us learn more about that species. And then I did mention I had a map here kind of just covering the range of the rusty patch bumblebee. This was just updated. This is the Fish and Wildlife Service puts out their high potential zones. You can see Wisconsin's playing a pretty important role with the conservation of this species in the future. So yeah, and then Minnesota and Northern Illinois and Iowa too. But the only other population that is persisting is in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia, Virginia area. And with that, I'll just put a plug in for to help fund projects like this. A lot of this project was funded through gift money that is donated to the NHC Bureau to help do projects like this for endangered species. So please, if you are able to make contributions like that, that helps us out. And just some of the main people who've made this project possible. My colleagues, Eva and Terrell, and they've helped with all the database and trainings and website stuff. And then Jill, our IT person, and Susan Carpenter with the UW Arboretum has really helped promote bumblebee citizen science. And then my supervisor, Owen Boyle, who's helped in the initial stages of getting this project going. And of course, all the volunteers out there that have made this project possible. And with that, I will leave plenty of time I think we have for questions. So, and hopefully Jessica is going to help with that.